Hi, in this quick tip we're going to look at these things called the C clefs. Now you may well be a musician who plays an instrument that uses one of these C clefs, in which case this will be totally familiar to you. But lots of people are okay using the treble and the bass clef, but after that they're a bit lost. Some people are even surprised to find out there are some other clefs. Historically there were quite a number of clefs, most of which have been kind of done and dusted for some time. But apart from the treble and the bass clef, we also have the alto clef and the tenor clef that are still very much in use. So you may be interested in playing one of the instruments that uses the alto or the tenor clef, what we know as the C clefs, or it may just be that you want to be able to read these clefs so when you see maybe an orchestral score, you can deal with it. Or maybe you're an accompanist who's accompanying somebody who plays in one of these C clefs and you just want to be sure what you're doing in these clefs. So here's just a quick introduction to how these C clefs work, and we'll explain why they're called C clefs as well. Now, unlike the treble and the bass clef, which is a kind of fairly standard way of writing the clefs, in the case of the C clef, there's more than one way of going about writing the clef. So you might, for example, write an alto clef like this. So there's an alto clef, but you might also write it like this. So you could see it in either of those forms. Either way, it means the same thing. So here is an alto clef. You see what I've got? I've got these two lines, and then I've got these two hooks either side of the middle line. Or I've got the two lines, and then I've got a kind of thing that looks a bit like a 3 with an extra bar across that middle line. The important thing is that we highlight this middle line because that middle line in the alto clef is C. So what I've written there is the alto clef. And the alto clef shows us where C is. Now, most importantly, it's not any old C. This is showing us where middle C is. So this is middle C. So if you think about this in relation to the treble clef, you might look at it and think, well, in the treble clef, that would be B. So if it's C, it's kind of one note away from the treble clef. That's absolutely true, but you have to go one step further and think it's also an octave lower, because this B in the treble clef is actually higher, isn't it? So if this is middle C, it's one away from the treble clef, but going down the octave. So there's middle C, and there's middle C in the alto clef as well. If you want to know about the tenor clef, it's exactly the same, but notice the new position of the clef. So do you see where I'm putting the clef this time? And if I want to write it the other way, well, let's do that in exactly the same way. So there is the tenor clef. And it's another C clef. We talk about the treble clef as a G clef because it's wrapped around the G line. It shows us where G is. We talk about the bass clef as an F clef because that fourth line either side of in the middle of the dots is the note F. So clefs are designed to pinpoint a note, and we can work out all the other notes from the clef that way. So here's a C clef. So in the case of the tenor clef, the clef looks just the same as it did for the alto clef, but this time C is not on the third line, it's on the fourth line. So that's the only difference. The clef sign is the same, but it's differently positioned. You start it on line 2 and you go up to a sort of imaginary ledger line above the stave there. But these are middle Cs, and these are also middle Cs. So if you wanted to relate that to the treble clef, you could think, well, that looks like D in the treble clef, so it's only one note the other way. So you can kind of work these out by transposing from the treble clef if you want to, but again, make sure you've got the right C, because this is not C an octave above middle C, again it's middle C. So there we are, that just shows you how to work in the C clefs. Who uses these things? If you play the viola, you'll play in the alto clef all the time. If you play the cello or the bassoon, well, you may well spend much of your time in the bass clef, but you'll also spend some of your time in the tenor clef. If you play the trombone in the orchestra, well, sometimes the first trombone part is written in the alto clef, the second trombone in the tenor clef, and the third trombone in the bass clef. So you see there are various people who do use these other clefs, but that's how they work. And there's a little introduction to the C clefs.